Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Planman. Everything you wanted to know about finance, insurance, and more. I'm your host, Bruce Weinstein. Today's guest had a unique experience that motivated her to seek change. As a physical therapist, Natalie encountered a patient who suffered a horrific car accident. This patient was injured by someone with inadequate auto insurance, which cost her patient her life savings because she had to pay for her own care and recovery. This led to Natalie's aha moment. Natalie quickly realized this is something she never wanted her or her family and friends to ever have to suffer this kind of financial burden. From this experience, Natalie became an independent insurance agent and is here to talk with us today about property and casualty insurance, or what most of you know as auto and homes coverage. Please welcome my guest, Natalie Bone. Natalie, thank you for joining us on Ask the Planman. That's quite a wake-up call. Let me ask, how long did it take you to go from physical therapist to active insurance agent?
Well, that's a really good question. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Absolutely.
It's my first podcast ever, so I'm a little bit nervous, but
All
here
right,
it comes.
have some more
Yeah.
bourbon. You'll be fine.
So from the time I experienced that, I really started. And prior to that, I'd had some issues with my own homeowner's insurance policy that I had, which is a whole nother long story. But after I witnessed what this young lady had gone through with her, the person who hit her did not have adequate insurance, and she herself did not have adequate insurance. But she really needed physical therapy, and people think that their health care is just going to cover that, and it doesn't always, and it did not for her. And so she was having to pay out of pocket for physical therapy at the time, and this would have been 6 years ago. It was like $450 per session for physical therapy that she was having to pay out of pocket for, and it just pretty much wiped out her life savings. But she had to do it because she needed to be able to return to work. So with that said, from that moment, I really started looking into, well, what's in my auto insurance policy? I'd already had a horrible situation with my home. And so I really started looking into it. And then from that point, it was probably about a year from the time that happened to when I decided to become an insurance agent. I took the test, and it's been a learning process from day one. You're always learning in the insurance world. Things are ever changing. So.
100%. So let's go back to what happened with your patient and see if we can dissect a little bit of where the flaws or the misnomers are. As you went to do some self-discovery on your policies, you started to see some things that maybe didn't add up or wasn't the right. And so the caution for everybody, what we want to try and break down here, and we always give people the so what's, is what are people doing wrong with their auto insurance coverages? Why are they being a penny pincher without necessarily realizing the exposure that they're keeping themselves open against? Because in your person's case, she had the bad day and didn't realize the insurance she was buying was adequate to cover those expenses. And so it's always something we find out too late. Like, I'm going to get a terminal illness and now I need life insurance. Well, it's too late, folks, right? So you can't say, as you're about to crash into somebody at a traffic light, I hope I have enough coverage. So let's break down best we can what goes into, we'll start with auto and then we'll go over to home and hopefully tie in umbrella. So in a homeowner's policy, what are the components that makes up the coverage and then drives the costs to the premium? Can we
On a
break that
homeowner's
down?
policy? Oh,
Auto
auto
first.
first?
Start with the
Okay.
auto.
Auto's not so difficult. Homeowners, we might be here all night if I do that. But so with auto insurance, now of course I was not privy to her particular auto insurance policy. I don't know what she had or didn't have, but my guess is um, the person who hit her only had minimum state requirements. So for liability. So at the max, they had $50,000. Um, that probably.
So this is again, let's just break it down. So there's liability, right? There's accident liability, property damage, things of that nature. And so there's different levels of coverage that you buy. Some states have a state like Florida state minimum is 10,000, 20,000. Other states might be a little bit higher, 25, 50. But ultimately, a younger, poorer driver, the rates are higher in general because they're younger, they're inexperienced, and so the way they'll keep their premiums down is by taking lower coverage. And state minimum is basically where the state says, Natalie, we'll let you drive, but you need at least this. And so, okay, that's what gets me my insurance coverage to buy my car, and so I'm going to buy the state minimum. Now, I hit somebody and create $75,000 worth of damage, but my policy only covers me for ten
Yeah,
thousand.
yeah, that's what
That
happened. And he only had 50,000, and that barely got her medical expenses paid for, like for the hospital stay, the ambulance ride, all that stuff. Didn't even begin to cover, anything else really. And so, on her side of the policy, my guess is she did not have uninsured, underinsured coverage. So what that is when you get hit by somebody, it's their fault, but they don't have adequate coverage to help you out. Then your plan then kicks in and makes up the difference for what that person's insurance was not able to cover. So my guess is she also did not have that. So
Sure. So again, so when you're referring to uninsured motorist, what happens is when two people collide or have an accident, somebody's trying to be labeled at fault. And so based on who's at fault, well, the innocent person, their insurance company wants to get the money back from the person who caused the harm. And so that's the dispute back and forth. Now, if the person who did the harm doesn't have enough coverage, then there's nothing for your carrier to recover. And so now they're on the hook for it. And of course, then your claim and your rates and everything start to go up. But there is a large bump up in premium that I see when people add uninsured motorist protection. And so it starts to price them out of wanting to have that covered. So if you don't have uninsured motorist protection and the person hits you without insurance or inadequate insurance, what could happen there?
uh, yeah, you're on the hook for it. I mean, you are. It's you're, the only other option at that point is you can file a lawsuit, but if they probably don't have anything anyways to go after. So, um, not always. There have been some that have had to, obviously file a lawsuit to get their medical expenses paid for, and that turned out favorably. But for the most part, no, you're on the hook at that point. You're, yeah,
Right.
out of
There's
luck.
no coverage. There's nothing. You're suing yourself. You can't get anything from anybody if they don't have any money. So let's break down a little bit before we move over to home. Is there's terms we want to make sure that people understand. You have something called collision. You have something called comprehensive, and then we want to give people warnings. I just had this happen the other day. We had a client the other day got a brand new car, and it had some kind of spoiler on the back, and went through the car wash. The car wash rips the spoiler off his car. Doesn't call us. Immediately calls the insurance company for something that's only a few $100 potential claim. And he literally just got the policy that week because he just got the car. And of course, I'm now getting phone calls. It's like, because what's going to happen here, and the reason I'm sharing this is call your agent first. Don't call the insurance company unless it's midnight and you've had a horrific accident and you need emergency care or treatment and you can't reach your agent. But your agent's going to advise you whether or not that's a claim worth submitting. Not that they're going to deter you, they got no skin in the game, but what's going to happen to my client now is his rates are going to go up for such a measly incident that probably would have been a couple bucks out of his pocket. But now because he put in a claim, and especially since he has no history with this carrier, he's already going to be labeled a risk. And so if you're putting in claims frequently, your rates are going to keep going up.
Actually, yes. To add to that, most carriers, if you file a claim within the first 30 days of coverage, they're going to cover it, but then they're going to drop you. So hopefully it doesn't get dropped.
Oops.
Um,
For the $200, he's going to have no coverage. And then he's got to explain to the next guy why he got dropped. And they're going to charge him double because they know the first guy's not
I
going to
had
take
somebody
him
call
back.
me one day. They said, I can't get insurance. I can't get auto insurance. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? So I started looking into what was going on. I said, you have 9 auto claims going on here. No wonder you can't get insurance. And they were all for $75. And I'm like, they're all, what's going on? And he's like, well, I bought this new vehicle. The computer in it was having issues. And I kept having to call a tow truck to tow it off and file it. So it was a claim every single time that they would call the roadside through their insurance. They, after
That's why
9,
you spend $80 and get
yeah,
AAA,
after
folks.
9 claims, he couldn't get insurance. I was able to help him, but at a very costly premium.
And on average, how long does it take for these blemishes to fall off people's records?
Anymore, it seems to be 5 to 6 years.
5 to 6 years, folks. So again, listen to what we're telling you here is think twice. I use the line stop, drop, and roll like they used to teach us in school, right? As if there's a fire, stop, drop, and roll. So if you have a problem and you potentially need a claim, stop, call your agent, talk it through. Don't just go and file these things because it will jam you up. So
Oh, I would add to
yeah,
that.
please.
Also, even if you just call your insurance carrier and you say to them, hypothetically, if a tree fell on my roof, would that be covered? They immediately start a claim. Whether it ever pays out or does not pay out, if you call with a hypothetical question about your insurance, whether it's covered or not, a claim is immediately started and you will be surcharged when that policy renews if you don't get that taken off. And so
Because they're assuming there's no hypothetical
there's no
situation.
hypothetical, yeah. So always call your
Yeah,
agent. Don't call the
yeah. Let's
carrier.
call your agent. Work with your agent. Call your agent. This is the difference of why sometimes a call center is not the best place to save a few dollars, but having an agent that's going to be knowledgeable and educated to work with you. And again, our job is to warn off the what ifs and make sure you don't hurt yourselves. And so you need to listen to your agents. And I don't know if the little green guy or any general or anybody's going to give you that because they're
Well,
just
and
taking
that's why
away.
I say it's important to work with an agent. It's not going to cost you more. If you go direct to the carrier, you don't have that ability to contact an agent. And like, it's going to save you money in the long run to work with an agent. Don't go direct to carrier.
So we have real quick. We have comprehensive and we have collision. So collisions if there's bodily damage to the car. What's comprehensive insurance? What can we tell people to make sure they understand how their
It's
comprehensive
anything
works?
other than collision. So,
So coconut falls on my car in sunny South Florida here. Uh, Somebody breaks into my car, right? That could be somebody scratches my car or a potential hit and run. I guess if the hit and run, if there's damage, that would still be collision.
if a deer runs into you,
A deer. All right. So those of you living in the the rural areas where, and I believe me, I've hit a few deer, not on purpose for
no,
sure.
you didn't. The deer hit you.
The deer hit me. I was certainly not driving towards them. They jumped at me. So yeah. So there you go. So that's not necessarily a driver's fault. It still may cause a blemish, but it's covered under my comprehensive. And then again, just some subtleties here. Your comprehensive deductible might be different than your collision deductible. And again, that's a way people might save money is if I have an accident, I'm going to absorb the first 500 or the first $1,000 towards a deductible. In the health insurance, you're familiar with deductibles, so there are deductibles here in auto. So let's pivot to homeowner. Well, I have one more point on health. Health. I'm all confused already. On auto, because I had this conversation with somebody the other day, and a phenomenon that's going on. The rates have really started to jack up for people without any history based on where they live, the type of car that they're driving, the ages that they have. And the first thing I said to them was, look at the used car market and how inflated used car prices with COVID and the shortage of chips and the lack of supply, you have 3 and 4 year old cars reselling for 90 to 100% of their original value. Now, why is this important? Natalie, what's the so what here is if I'm an insurance company and I was giving you cash value of the car. You bought a $40,000 car that is now depreciated 3 years later, should be 60%, right? So 24,000. Well, we're charging you to replace a $24,000 risk. All of a sudden the market pivots and that car's back to worth $35,000 to $40,000. So the insurance company is on the hook for 30, 40, 50% more than what they anticipated or they knew 2 or 3 years ago. And so the rates adjust and people are astonished of how expensive their auto got. So what can you add to that?
Absolutely. I mean, you're dead on. So, you know, that didn't help things. And then one of the things too that happened is that during COVID, a lot of people weren't out driving, and so the claims that were being made went down drastically. And so a lot of these carriers had to issue back credits because they were too profitable with what they had coming in versus going out. So then about 6 months to a year ago, that completely flipped because all of a sudden people were back out driving, but they were driving with less regard to those around them. I mean, it went from one side of the ditch to the other. So then all these carriers were like, "Whoa! Now we're losing money. We've got to make it back." Well, guys, the way carriers make their money back, they increase their premiums, and it's across the board. It's not one or two carriers. It's every carrier is dealing with this right now.
Well,
So
it's part of it is they could take advantage of the shift in the market. Part of it is necessity. Part of it might be a little bit of gouging. But as you said, we got a rate decrease during COVID because they knew we weren't going anywhere, and they knocked off maybe 10, 15%. So they did give back a little bit, figuring, hey, you're not really going out anywhere now, so we'll share that with you during these times. But they want to make their money back, so they're jacking that rate up. So let's pivot a little bit on the homeowner side, and we'll sidebar renters coverage for those who don't own homes. There's contents insurance and protection you might need, if you're just renting. But if you own a home and you have a mortgage, you are required by the mortgage company to have homeowners insurance. Just like this auto has a state minimum. So if you have a mortgage, you are required to protect their debt. If your home is paid off, nobody's got a gun to your head saying you must purchase this homeowners. But statistically, Natalie, you and I both know that the average home makes up a significant 50% and more, some cases, of the net worth of our clients. So can you afford for that house to be destroyed by fire, flood, hurricane, mudslide, wind fires, hurricane down here? So you're going to need and should have that asset always protected, right?
absolutely, they say our homes are one of our largest assets. So to not protect it, to me, just seems totally crazy. But yeah, homeowners insurance is one of those things that's actually a pretty it's kind of near and dear to my heart with it, which might sound a little crazy, but my husband and I, we bought a home about it wasn't our first home. We just happened to be moving, bought a new home. Like most people, I had to get insurance for it because we did have a mortgage. And so, like most people, I called around and was shopping, see if I can find the least expensive homeowners policy. I mean, that's all I knew is I needed insurance and I didn't want to pay a lot for it. So, the long story short, the agent that we ultimately ended up going with, he knew I was shopping him, and so he provided me with a very stripped down, basic, horrible homeowners insurance policy. I did not know that because I didn't know what to look for. All I did was I was looking at that bottom number, that premium, and I was like, oh, we have a winner. He's the best one. Went with it. 2 years later, we start having all of these things happen because it was an older home. It was big, beautiful money pit is what it was. And So, I'd call and I'd be like, oh my gosh, this just happened. I think we need to file a claim. We had actually a water sewer backup into our basement, which was not covered. He did not put that as coverage on the policy. And it ended up, we had to pay it out of pocket. It was over $35,000 worth of damages. And then we had to have a new sump pump put in. I mean, we had to have all of this stuff done. We had to pay it completely out of pocket because what probably would have cost me $100 a year to add to that policy, he didn't because he wanted to win. He wanted my business.
Well, there's price and there's cost. You were shopping price. You weren't keen in on cost, and the cost is if it hits the fan, which literally it did. It came up underneath, so it did hit the fan, and so are you vulnerable? So this is why we're doing the show. Is there's a lot of what you don't know, and how do you know to ask for it's out there. And so part of the Planman agenda is to give people the what you don't knows so you can go into this being more educated. And literally when you look at a homeowner's outline of coverage, summary of benefits declaration page, there could be dozens and dozens of items listed there that go into what's covered and what's not covered. And so if you don't know what to look for, then how do you know you're not getting it? And then guess who gets bit in the behind is Natalie and Jason, right? Natalie and Jason, and now they're coughing up 35 G's because, oh, that's not covered. Oh, that's not covered. And for you and I as reputable agents, that's not a phone call we ever want to get from our clients of, you didn't tell me that, you didn't cover me for that. But every day our phones ring, yours and mine, with people of like, can you beat that price? My rates have gone up. And you're looking at their coverage and they're like, look, this is the state of, and we'll tie in the auto price increases, right? I'm in South Florida. The average home value because of COVID has gone up 50 to 100%. Well, your insurance costs are if your home value just doubled in the last 3 years, your homeowner's insurance is going to double because you're asking them to cover replacing everything except the physical land itself, right? So it's going hand in hand. Now, the crisis that we're facing is we've had 6-7 carriers leave the Florida market. So now the body and the access to coverage has shrunk. The carriers that are in the market don't necessarily want more risk, meaning they don't want to take on more liability. If I have to pick up 100,000 more homes, make it, I don't know, whatever that is, $500,000 a home. Like, I don't want to have a $500 million increase to my $3 billion exposure. $3 billion is all I can take with reserves. And again, people have to understand the dynamics of how insurance works because they have to put money behind the risk they take on. The insurance commission just doesn't let Natalie and I sell insurance and walk away with all that money. We have to put money in reserves for that rainy day. And the rainy day is, do you have enough reasonable reserves to pay out claims? And when a hurricane hits South Florida, God forbid, or Louisiana and Houston, or the mudslides or the wildfires in California, like, these are areas that have consistent natural disasters. Insurance companies don't play anymore.
It's so true. It's so true. And I think a lot of times what people don't understand about homeowners insurance that kind of ties into what you're talking about is people think that they're insured for what they paid for the house. And they're not. They're insured for what it would cost the carrier to rebuild that exact house. So for instance, I had a lady call me. She bought a home. You're going to love this. She paid like $180,000 for it. This thing looked like it was huge, it was brick, plantation, it was like 6,000 square foot, beautiful woodwork on the inside, very well maintained, but it was in like a very kind of sketchy area. And so, the house was great, beautiful house, no problems with the house, sketchy area. So that is what that piece of property was worth when she bought it based on the market that she was buying in. So the problem was her homeowner's insurance was crazy because every carrier that we would quote it through would estimate the rebuild cost of this home to be $3 million. That was the lowest we could find it. Others were estimating it even higher. So it made her homeowner's insurance premium just high because
So the value because of the market was so depressed, but the actual physicality to build something that large in a replacement, 'cause this is rare. You don't hear. It's usually the other way around, right? It's not.
right, yeah.
Wow, I've never heard that.
Yeah, so people will call me, well, I only paid 250,000. Well, it's not about what you paid. It's about what it's going to cost the carrier to rebuild that structure for like it was. And this particular home had a lot of ornate wood on the inside. I mean, it when it was built back in the 1800s, it was very nicely done. So, for the carrier to be able to rebuild it like that, it was going to be very costly, and people don't think about those things when buying a home.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's couple of terms in there that we were alluding to is so you have replacement cost and you have actual cash value. And so I was describing that to somebody earlier today. So this goes to the car we just talked about with the depreciation, but the same thing with the home is what we're dealing with, and a lot of people are dealing with now, are the aging roofs. So let's say a roof life expectancy is 30 years, and a roof replacement, again, just say it's $50,000. So replacement cost is we're going to put a new roof on regardless of the cost, right? We're going to replace it. We're paying for it. If it's now 70,000, it's 70,000. And oh, by the way, I was going to tie in what happened with lumber prices during COVID. So if your lumber prices quintupled, well, isn't that jacking up my replacement cost because I need wood to build my non-brick house? So you have the replacement cost versus the cash value, actual cash value. And so what does that mean? That's simply depreciated value. If my roof is 20 years old and it has a 30-year life expectancy, well, the actual cash value is only a third of that potential replacement cost. They're not going to cover the whole thing.
Most of the time, what they're willing to cover sometimes doesn't even hit the deductible that you have.
Well, that's right. That's another good point. Exactly. Depending on what it is, again, for those, I'm in South Florida, and so hurricane deductibility is around 5% of the value of the house. So if you got a $500,000 coverage, you got a $25,000 deductible. If your roof blows off and it's $20,000 cash, the cash value, right? Not replacement cost, but the actual cash value with depreciation. So you're paying the 20 grand because you didn't even hit your deductible, and they're only going to give you 20 grand, and you're 25 in the hole to begin with. So these are things you need to know and understand when you're looking at your policies and figuring things out. And then you get into things that we've seen now with what happens if the telephone pole, or I don't know if there's telephone poles anymore, the electric outside has a surge and comes back into my house, and I don't have surge protectors, and blows out my computer system and all my electronics. How is that covered? What if my laptop gets a surge and disintegrates? Am I covered? Cybersecurity in your home. Somebody hacks into my account. So there's so many of these nuances that can go into your homeowners. We could get into valuable items and jewelry and artwork, and there's limitations. So no, those are separate riders. If you have an engagement ring that's $5, $10, $20,000, that's not going to normally be covered under a standard homeowner's policy. You're going to need a rider called valuable items. You're an art collector, you're a wine collector, you have comic books, baseball cards, all that stuff.
Anything of value, you better be telling your agent about it.
That's right. Don't just
And
assume it's in some.
document it.
Yeah, because if it's stolen, you want it protected. If it's burnt or lost in a fire or flood, washed away, your hurricane, sends your comic book collection to Iowa, you're SOL, right? You're standing out of luck. So what else with homeowners?
Well, to kind of touch on just what you're talking about, the other two big things, maybe not in Florida, but in the Midwest, One is we have earthquakes. We have a lot of earthquakes. We actually just had one here in Missouri like 2 weeks ago. Sometimes they cause damage, sometimes they don't. But if you don't have earthquake coverage on your policy, it's not covered. It's not covered under a normal standard homeowner's policy. You have to get additional coverage. The thing with earthquake coverage is that I would say most people don't have it. Most people probably think they do have it or that it's covered. Those that do actually have it probably can't even afford the deductible if should they need to use it. The deductible with earthquake coverage usually is around 20% of the replacement cost of the home. So if you have a home that's valued at say 400,000, your deductible for an earthquake coverage is 20% of 400,000. I don't do
80
head
grand.
math, but it's a lot of
80,
money, and
80, I
most
can do
people
that one.
can't pay that.
That's 80 grand. I got that number.
Yeah, most people don't have just 80 grand sitting
Yeah.
around to pay for a deductible for the coverage. So I always tell people like earthquake coverage is great to have, but don't pay for it if you can't afford the deductible. Like if you're not gonna be able to fork over $80,000, what's the
We
point?
can break down the natural disasters: flood, hurricane, mudslides, fire, wind, the forest fires, not somebody's toaster oven ignites, but more of a natural disaster fire, floods and the hurricanes. So the the challenge is, yes, the 20% deductible, but if it's a full loss, and they're going to say, well, you didn't have earthquake, you didn't have flood, you didn't have uh, what am I missing? Mudslide. You didn't have windstorms. And you hit the Midwest, Texas, Oklahoma with the tornadoes, right? So any and all of these are called natural disasters. Certain states and markets, their insurances are super low because there are no natural disasters there. But the insurance companies have to look at the risk, the population growth, the number of homes, who can divide that risk up, how many carriers are playing in that market to absorb 50,000 new homes being built. Who's going to cover that, right? Maybe if I'm Allstate Farmers, State Farm, a lot of them left South Florida for homeowners coverage. They don't want to play. And they left California. There's not a lot of options. So it becomes a problem. So, like anything else, you've got to take the measure of risk, find the grounds of affordability, but most importantly is understand where you're susceptible. Right? I say all the time, nobody likes to pay for insurance, but we like what it does when a crisis occurs. Whether it's life insurance or long-term care or auto, home, health, whatever it is. But we can also drown as a society on paying for all of these things. And not everybody can afford to be insured to the nines, to the max, to the Natalie, give me everything. I'm your best client in the world. I want this. I want no deductible. I want to pay a
Yeah, I
million
can hook you up
dollars in
with a
premiums.
$20,000 policy, no problem.
Right. Right. So they're not out there. And now with the inflation that's been going on, gas prices, fuel prices, rent costs, your insurance costs are escalating with it, which is just tightening everybody's noose. We do health insurance. When does insurance go down? Virtually never, right? So it's always going to be an inflated cost that you're always going to have to keep adding more money into that kitty, which means if you're not increasing your income, you're giving up something else. And when we God, I'm sorry. When we talk about planning, we say things like, do you want to eat better? Do you want to sleep better? But the simple answer, if you don't understand how inflation works, Natalie makes $100 a week. Bread is $50, and gas for her car is $50. And now inflation has driven both of these to $100 each. Does Natalie stop eating, or does she stop putting gas in the car? Because she still only has $100.
Natalie would never stop eating. I'd ride my bike to work.
Hey, see, there's a solution and everything, right? Yeah. So, but this is what people are facing, and they're going to have to make those sacrifices. Like you said, they're going to carpool. You ride the bike. You're gonna rollerblade, whatever it is. But the message we want is you can't skimp on some of the things that are literally your biggest assets, and to be properly protected, to understand, we hope, whether you call Natalie, me, or anybody else, is you call and do a review. How often do you suggest clients review their plans and their coverages? What's your normal?
Well, yearly for your average client. If you're somebody though that's buying and selling property often, you buy a house in Florida and then you decide to sell that and then you buy another house and whatever, 6 months I think is a good time to do a review, just because there's things that probably people are going to forget, and their agent will catch that if they're doing a 6 month review. But for your normal average person,
They're steady eddies. They're not going anywhere. They're not moving. It's just their family's growing. Their needs change. We always tell people, if you have a life event, let us know, right? Because it's going to have an impact on something. Your teenage driver all of a sudden needs to get added to the policy. You can't just let your 15, 16, 17-year-old just drive.
well, and a lot of things people don't think about is they move grandma in, or anybody just moves into their house. Well, your agent calls, hey, how's it going? And they're like, oh, yeah, we just moved my mom in with us. She decided to live with us. Oh, okay. Well, does your mom have a driver's license? Yeah, she drives. She got. I have to add her to your policy. She lives in your home. I have to add her now. And it's good that we catch that. And then they'll say things like, well, she never drives our car. Well, in the off chance that she might, we have to add her to the policy. So we're going to catch those things that's going to keep you properly covered by doing those reviews that other people just wouldn't even think about.
Because it's on our radar to ask, right? And so that's why we implore people to come to us, is we're going to tell you what you don't know. We're going to give you the, oh, have you thought about this? Like, I'm that outside the box kind of guy. I always say, like, I throw mud on the wall just to see what works or doesn't work, and it's up to you to tell me no or not. But shame on me if I don't bring it up, right? There's, again, I'm going to date myself. By the way, she didn't know the Carol Burnett theme song, everybody. She's much younger than me. But there was a commercial years back. I believe it was E.F. Hutton, whose defunct brokerage firm. And there's two people having whatever, lunch, coffee, and they're discussing that one dealing with the other situation, and how that person's advisor had given them these solutions, right? So just tied into grandma moving in the house and having, so you and I are at the table and you're like, my grandmother moved in and my agent said, and I didn't realize, and so I had to add my my mother-in-law to my policy, and then the friend says, well, how did your agent know that? And the response is, and this is the ad campaign was, well, she asked, right? So I think it was E.F. Hutton. But if I'm wrong, people tell me, send me a message, email, let me know who I'm thinking of. But I think it's E.F. Hutton. It's we earn your business, and they do some other things. We earned it, but there was something in there along the lines that they asked, and so for all the years I've been in the business, I ask. You could tell me no, but I've got a punch list, and I'm going to go through my punch list to make sure I'm covering every base possible, so that Natalie and Jason can put their head on their pillow at night going, a professional reviewed this and told me I'm okay. Or they told me where I'm susceptible, and they gave me the education and the option to do something about it. And if they don't, they don't. That's okay. But at least and you put in your client records, told Natalie she's underinsured for blank, and Natalie said, I'm fine where I am. So when Natalie has a problem, it's not Bruce's behind that's going to be dragged into court, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Document.
yeah. Document. There's a reason they call it CYA, right?
Yeah,
Cover
exactly
your
right.
annuity, cover your backside. So, real quick, the third piece I had on my list to talk about, I don't think it's too deep of a dive, is umbrella, because it's kind of the holy trinity in property and casualty, what people call personal lines. Now, today's not about commercial insurance, folks. We're going to try and do a separate episode on commercial insurance, but we're talking about personal lines, which is to each individual consumer, not business. And so Natalie and I are personal line agents and licensed and educated, and that constitutes auto, home, umbrella, and then of course RVs, right? Recreational vehicles, boats, motorcycles, and we call them the toys. But what's umbrella? Why do people need it? Why is it used? And what is it?
So, umbrella is kind of like what it sounds like. It covers everything at a higher level of coverage. So, I don't know what it's like in Florida. Maybe it's the same, but in Missouri, where I live, you would have the highest level of liability coverage, which here is usually around 500,000. And if you're like, well, 500,000 just really does not protect my assets and my net worth. Like, if somebody sued me, they could sue me for millions, and I've got it. So I need to make sure I'm protected. That umbrella is going to cover you and your savings and everything that you've worked hard for more than the 500,000. You could do 1 million, you can do 2 million. But it's going to cover everything. It's going to cover the liability for your home, your autos, your boats, your ATVs, your all of it.
Somebody falls on your property, right? It could be something that you didn't even do or initiate, but you didn't shovel the snow, and somebody takes a header, and now they're suing you for $3 million because they can never work again, and your policy is only covering $500,000. Well, now if they really find against you in a trial, they're attaching your assets, which is why estate planning and trusts and everything else, get done where people not hide, but protect their assets from frivolous lawsuits. But umbrella is going to help cover and provide more of that. But you said something I want to make sure people caught is you can't buy state minimum and an umbrella. You got to get the auto carrier to take you to their max, and you pay for that with them, because that, think of it as a deductible to your umbrella people, is they don't want to step in on $50,000. They want to step in on $501,000, because if any claim is in between that, 50,000 to $500,000, well, they're not on the hook for it. Now, if it goes above that, and they know statistically it's, less risk to them being that high, then they can keep the umbrella coverage a little bit more favorable in price.
And really, umbrella coverage is not expensive. I mean, it has gone up a little bit over the last couple of years, but still relatively, like, it's $200 for a whole year to be totally covered. It's definitely worth it, especially if you have a lot of net worth and assets. You need to make sure that you have that. I remember, was it Hulk Hogan that sued his insurance agent because Hulk Hogan had some money, and his son was in a car accident, and the people they sued him for a lot, and he had to pay it, and he lost a lot because of it, because his agent did not have him covered correctly. So that umbrella is pretty important.
Now, I can't say it'll be 200 for everybody, so let's be clear. It really depends on where you live, what your assets are, what you are protecting. If Natalie has a $7 million house and I have a $70,000 house, our umbrella policies are going to be different in price, because you're going to be taking it out. And let's bring it full circle, because at the beginning we talked about if you have no mortgage, you're not required to have homeowners insurance. And now here we're back to umbrella, which basically says if you've got money, you need to protect your assets from these types of suits. Not just your house burning down or a flood or something else. Do you want to replace the value of that home? But now if somebody gets hurt on your property, or you unfortunately caused harm to somebody, or you are found to be culpable, do you want to lose those assets? Because Hulk Hogan did, as Natalie just shared.
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite stories, I don't know if there's any children listening, but if there is, you're probably going to want to earmuff them for this. But have a client who actually had an event at their house. I think it was a holiday event. They did not get the sidewalk salted before some of the people started showing up. And this particular couple showed up early, and was walking on the sidewalk, fell. The wife, I believe it was, broke her leg. So they were not able to win the lawsuit for the broken leg, which I find interesting, but they came back and resued for the fact that because of the broken leg, they were no longer able to do the dirty. Yeah. No, not have children. They just couldn't do the dirty, And so
Do what it takes to make the children.
you got it exactly. And they won that. They actually won that case and had to pay million. The homeowner had to pay. I think it was like over $1 million to this couple. It was absolutely crazy. So you never know. Like you just never know what's going to happen. You're thinking, oh, it's just my friends. Let me tell you, your friends when they need money, they have no problem suing you.
Because ultimately they figure you have insurance and they want to get what they can from the insurance.
They want the insurance to pay. Yep.
But when your insurance doesn't exist, you're in trouble.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Natalie, I really appreciate you being with us today. How can people reach you? We're going to have your info in the show notes, but give everybody a quick shout out. How can they get a hold of you if they want to talk to you more, need their items reviewed, or just have questions? How can they reach you?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. You can call me, 314-566-4541. You can email me, which I think you're going to put my email there.
Yep, we got
and
the
then,
show notes.
so please reach out, email me. I've got actually over 40 insurance carriers that I can shop to find you the best rates that I possibly can with good coverage. I don't do, like I said, I don't do stripped down coverages. So that's not me. But if you want to make sure you're well protected, but at the best possible value, give me a call.
Bargain hunters need not apply, right? We're not Woolworth giving away 5 and dime insurance. How many states are you licensed in presently?
So Missouri and Kansas at the moment. Oh, and Illinois. Yes, Missouri, Kansas, and Illinois. But for the most part, I can get licensed in any state, wherever you are. It literally is a matter of me going on, clicking a button, and I'm licensed, and we can write the policy. So no matter what state you're in, doesn't matter. Call me.
Terrific. All right, so I'm going to thank my guest, Natalie. I'm going to remind everybody to please like, subscribe, share today's podcast. If you know somebody that's struggling with their auto coverage, their homeowners, they want to learn more about umbrella, please like, subscribe, and share. We'd love to hear from you. Please give us an email at bruce@asktheplanman.com. You can visit our website, asktheplanman.com. Call my toll-free number. I'll forward it to Natalie's phone for a while, 1-844-PLANMAN. Again, we've been talking about what you don't knows, how to protect yourself better when it comes to auto, home, and insurance coverage. You want to make sure that you're educated. Thank you for joining us. Remember, folks, when you need some advice, always get it right. Come ask the plan man. Natalie Bone, thank you so much for being with me today. It was a pleasure having you, and we'll see everybody next time.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
When you need some advice, never sacrifice, always get it right. Ask the plan man. Finance, insurance, and more.